Why do all diets work? At least for a little while. All diets seem to work. Not for everybody, but there's some crazy diets out there. A lot of them contradict other diets. The low carb craze is starting to die down, but that contradicted a lot of low fat diets. And the low fat diets are falling out of favor because high omega-3 diets are coming into favor, and people are losing weight on high fat diets. So why do these contradictory diets work, at least for a while? And why is it that no diet seems to work, or it's not been proven that any particular diet can work for a period of longer than 1 or 2 years? Well, all diets, the Subway diet, the cabbage soup diet, the apple cider vinegar diet, the peanut butter diet, all of these crazy, seemingly fad diets down to very scientific diets like the zone diet, where you have to divide up into very specific portions your meals every day. All of these diets work in the beginning, and they all share one trait. They all share change. And change is what makes these diets work. Change is the important thing. It's a shock to the system. It's the diet, the change in diet shocks the system, and the system responds. So why is this? So to talk about why this is, we need to talk about why we gain weight in the first place. We gain weight as a survival tool. We are all the descendants of survivors. We are from a long, proud lineage of survivors, survivors of famine. And famine is the one thing that has shaped human culture over time. Famine is something that's challenged every culture on Earth at some period of time. We're all descended from people that have been through it. And the ability to gain weight is the ability to survive a famine, to help us survive a famine. So we all gain weight. Our genes are programmed to gain weight because of famine. Famine has a particular pattern. So this is something that nobody seems to have talked about, or nobody seems to have discovered. It's not just famine that makes us, not just a genetic response to famine. Our genes aren't just patterned to respond to famine, but actually patterned to respond to the pattern of famine. Our genes respond to the beginnings of famine and how famine works, and our genes respond to the end of famine. So let's talk about that for a little bit. What famine looks like and how our genes might be conditioned to respond to it. In a typical famine, food doesn't run out all at once. You don't go from plenty and variety and high quality foods to absolutely no food at all. Typically, you move from the high quality to a lower quality food. So, for example, you might move from tremendous variety, all fruits and vegetables, meat and fish, everything you can dream of, to winter sets in and you're subsisting on potatoes. So the subsistence food might be high calorie, but low quality. It might have enough calories for us, but fairly low nutrient density. And that condition, that last food before all the food runs out, potatoes, or it might be corn, or in other parts of the world it might be yucca root, or there's many other things that are subsistence foods that are high in calories, rice and beans, and there's many subsistence foods that have the calories we need, but not the variety of nutrition that we need. So our genes may well be programmed to respond to this subsistence food, this ratio of reasonably high calories but low nutrients. Our genes may be conditioned to respond to that by storing. So that may trigger us to go into full storage mode. As soon as our genes believe that the famine is imminent. because that last food, those potatoes, once those potatoes run out, there's nothing. So when we're stuck with the metaphorical potatoes, we need to put on as much weight as quickly as possible. So this low nutrient, high calorie food, this condition of living with low nutrients and high calorie foods is the condition that most of us actually exist in. Most of us in our normal daily diets, we eat foods that are high calorie but low nutrients, heavily processed foods that have abundant calories but lower nutrients on a ratio basis. And that may be triggering us into a storage or a pre-famine mode. Our genes may respond directly to that, not just to famine, but to the pattern of famine. So how does that make every diet work? Well, at the end of famine, if you can imagine, the end of famine is spring. If you can imagine that there's a change, or perhaps the end of famine in our ancestors' times meant that our ancestors actually picked up and moved to a new area and found new food. So change, simple change. And it doesn't seem, if you look in the history and the hundreds of diets that are out there, the type of change doesn't seem to matter to trigger our genes to believe that the famine is over. It's simply change. That's why all of these crazy fad diets can work for some people, because change works. So what we're trying to do with the diet shock system is we're trying to make a system of change. We're trying to create constant change, that you're developing the ability to shock your system and challenge your system and continue to maintain a high nutrient to calorie ratio. So our bodies never go into that false famine. Our bodies never go into famine storage mode.